Hey,
Hey.
oh, we've got way better going on now.
Yeah, it's better now. My internet is better now.
How are you doing today?
I'm very good. I'm done with my finals, so I'm just chilling now.
Me
What
too.
about
Me too.
you?
I just got done with my finals and I'm chilling now. I'm trying to find a job for the season, but that's
Mhm.
nobody's trying to hire the day before Christmas. It sucks.
Yeah, but I hope you find one.
I'll just sell cocaine if I have to. Kidding, guys. Obviously not gonna actually sell cocaine. Don't call CPS on me.
Yeah, wasn't that a topic for your debate, the last debate?
Yeah, that was a pretty intense debate. Everybody should go watch that. It was a good one. And everybody should watch this one too. Everybody watch all of my debates and go on us. All right, so let's open it up.
Okay. So governments of conservative societies that financially incentivize men to be house husbands. And again, before starting this, this is not necessarily what I personally believe, but it's a side I have chosen to, yeah, to see what could actually come up from this side, because this is a perspective that normally people wouldn't think of. Um, so two main reasons to why financially incentivizing is actually going to work out. Firstly, when we talk about conservative societies, those are the societies that are definitely not willing to change at any cost. So no matter like you put them into social awareness, or no matter you put them the idea that women are actually equal now, or let's just say both of us like switch gender roles or anything, they're not the kind of society that are actually going to change or willing to accept that change. So if in case you want to talk about social awareness and a lot of things that could actually work out in this case, no, that solution does not work out. But the thing is that we need a solution to it. And secondly, finance, when we talk about money, I think it makes people go weak. Like, if we see, in case we talk about money, people are like willing to do anything for it. So I think this is a very good way. Financially incentivizing them would actually be a very good way to implementing this thing. And yeah, so I think that can actually look for the problem itself, because men will be men will be incentivized to be house husbands. There will be house husbands. Women also will be getting to work out, and then that in a way will actually if you'll see the transformation of the conservative societies too. So that's, I think, a very good way in terms of changing the mindset without actually willing to you know put put anything at risk for them, because you are actually giving them money to do it, and then you are actually creating a change as well. So I think that's a double benefit that comes with this thing. So yeah, so that's just the basic thing for me. I don't really have a concrete argument and everything for this. It's just, I think, a very common discussion oriented topic. So yeah, I want to see what you want to say on this part.
All right, thank you, everybody. Today I will be discussing whether governments of conservative societies should financially incentivize men to be house husbands. I'm going to start this off with a frame, just so everybody knows. I'm a full-time student and my wife works. I am a house husband. I am also an extremely conservative individual, as has been shown. Now, you say that they should be financially incentivized because these societies are places that are not willing to change, and that if we pay them, they're more likely to change. Plus, this lets women get out, they gain human capital because they're out there in the working force. It allows for men to interact with their children at a much higher level. Right? There's a lot of benefits that can be given here. But I want to point out specifically to conservative societies, right? I don't think you could say Southeast United States is a conservative society. So let's look at an actually conservative society. Afghanistan. I spent 2 years in Afghanistan. Just so everybody knows, I watched a woman get beat in front of me. It was awful, and it was one of the hardest things to not intervene. But obviously, I have to be an outside person, and I got to go. I cannot intervene in this because it's not my culture. Because in my culture, I would have dragged him out and beat him because you don't hit women. I don't care what any men's rights activist tells you or any feminist. There is not an immoral equivalence between a man and a woman. I'm 6 foot, 235 pounds on a good day. The average woman is what, 5'6", 145. She punches me, it's annoying and painful. I punch her, it's a hospital visit. Obviously, there's some difference. And I want to draw that attention to the next bit of difference. Even if it does change the society of Afghanistan, there's still going to be a significant, one, cultural problem with men to children, especially in some of these conservative societies. And two, there's a biological problem that we have to take into account. First one I'm going to touch on, in these conservative societies, pedophilia is a much bigger problem. Men in these societies, especially Afghanistan, they are more than willing to have sex with little boys. This is not a joke. That, and I know this is terrible, and a lot of veterans catch some slack for this, but we called it Man Love Thursday for a reason, because we used to, walk through the town and we would see the local chai shop in the bazaar, and you would just see some little boy walking out of there. I mean, no more than 8, 9 years old, limping, where he just got raped by multiple male members. If you incentivize men to be at the house more and let the women leave, you will only increase the amount of child molestation that happens in these conservative societies. Second, there's a biological problem. Young children need their mother more so than they do need their fathers. And I'm not saying that they don't need their fathers, but if I had to choose at the end of the day, a father or a mother, I would much rather my child personally go to the mother. The mother has short-term compassion. The mother is there and willing to be with the child with love and endearment. And I don't think that that's something that we can simply brush away. Men, yes, we have long-term compassion, but it's easier for a woman to adapt to long-term compassion than it is for a male to adapt to short-term compassion, especially when we talk specifically about these conservative societies that obviously are not going to change because of some social unrest in their area. That the financial incentive is not going to be a big enough change because of the negative outcomes that happens to these children and to the whole biological perspective of male to female.
Okay, so in your contentions, it seems like you also agree that there is actually an existing problem in this. So we both sides actually agree that there is an existing problem in this. So let's just say, if in case I'm proposing a solution that is a financial incentivization, I think if in case you tell me that that's not a good solution, I definitely want you to bring a better solution to it. So, but before that, I think the idea of child molestation, on that part, I think that is actually very limited to the place you were in, because I also come from a conservative society, like even Nepal, like it is. I mean, it is not necessarily like so much strict or whatever, like in terms of comparison with Afghanistan or Bangladesh, but still, like, it is a part of a conservative society. But still, like, those things do not happen in either Bangladesh or India or Pakistan or Nepal. So so I think that thing actually happened in the area we were living in. That is strange. Definitely, I agree to it, but I did not necessarily agree that if in case we put men as actually meant to be house husbands, they actually it will actually increase molestation and everything. I think because it is more of a question on morality, not necessarily on whether or not they're being house husbands. So if in case we go by that nature, we could also maybe, let's just say, maybe women would have more extramarital affairs if in case they become like house they stay on house, because like their men would be outside and then they would actually sleep with other people, because if in case you apply just the same thing here. So I think that does not necessarily apply to this case. And in terms of let's just say, talking about the biological thing you mentioned, I think as a society, even we are responsible for actually creating a big gap between a child and a father, because we have always seen this thing as maybe a mother is actually required more for a child. Like it's I think in the initial phase, in terms of how the child gets the food, it is, but I think in the later phase, I think it does not apply so much, but I think as a society we have pushed it more that women are more required for a child. And I think it is also somehow influenced by the patriarchy, because I think that's how we wanted to that's how we wanted to imply it. It's not necessarily how it was, but because we wanted to actually rule. So that was a good way of actually putting women at house, because babies need women more than a father, mother more than a father. So even in terms of, I think, the compassion thing, I do not agree that at a certain point, I think a man would not necessarily be able to handle a child. And I think that is also one of the big reasons why there is an existing gap between a father and a child today. And I think this is a great chance to actually decrease that gap, because if in case we are allowing those men to be house husbands, then we are actually allowing that gap to be decreased. And secondly, I think we are also giving women a space where they can be more understood by their husbands, because in conservative societies, what happens is that if in case a woman is a housewife, they do not actually consider they are working. So maybe let's just say they come from work, and let's just say a woman says like she's tired, they're like, what did you even do the entire day? Like, I worked outside and I did things. So there is this mindset that women are actually doing nothing being a housewife, it's just like chilling around and everything, but it is not. So I think if in case men can be house husbands, this space will be given for men to actually understand how the women role works, and how actually they have also been they have actually been putting so much of work and effort as much as they do in their workplace. So this, as I said, is actually going to create better understanding, because as I said, because like we both understand that there is an existing problem in this, we need a solution to it. And then financially incentivizing is the best solution to it, because I think that yeah, because that is a good incentive to do something. And then if after you do that thing, I think you have a better output, because as I said, you create a better level of understanding with your children as well, or with your spouse as well.
Okay, thank you for that. We're going to unpack some of those things, but first, I am going to give a better solution. I was going to get into it later, but I felt like I was taking up more time. So, the better solution is education. Now, obviously, you talked about some social change, but I want to make this clear. The story I'm getting ready to tell everyone is absolutely true, kind of terrifying, kind of hilarious, and kind of awful. So, prepare yourself. When I was in Afghanistan, we had this village that we had to go to because there was a constant problem that happened. And what was happening is these women were being killed every day. They were being dragged out into the street and killed. And we were sent up there to kind of check on like what is going on? Why is there all of this unrest? We were trying to see if there was like a tribal war or something going on. Come to find out is that none of the women were getting pregnant. Well, upon further investigation, what they had found is that this society of these conservative men were only having anal sex with women. They did not comprehend the idea that for birth to happen, they have to inseminate the womb through the vagina. Through education, we increased their population. This is a true story. So obviously, education does work in these parts of the world. We just have to get it to work. Now, how that mechanism comes about, I think should be done by state departments as a unified coalition of all countries. And it should also be from the internal government of that society. Now, I do want to talk about some things with that. So, biology, it is responsible for the gap of a child. And that you say that that at the earlier stages of the child's life, it seems to be more relevant that the mother matters more than the father, and as the child ages, that difference changes. I agree, but we have to take into account the average age of children, right? I'm not talking about like teenagers. I'm talking about children are going to be directly affected by this, right? So a child of 8 years old needs their mother more than their father. specifically because it's easier for a mother to adapt her behavior for a mother-father dynamic than it is for a father to adapt to the father-mother dynamic. Next, you say that this overall thing is socially constructed, but social construction has to derive from something. It can't just derive because we just like, oh, you know what? Let's have a patriarchal society because obviously that's better. That didn't happen. There's some biological, psychological, socio-biological tenet that this relies upon. And I'm going to go back to Jordan Peterson, right? So Jordan Peterson talks about the issues with social constructionism. Evolutionary psychology gives you a pretty direct answer on why the male and female dichotomy is there, especially when it comes to raising kids. Secondly, Jordan Peterson also says that he would prefer that if a child had to choose a parent, to choose the mother, not the father, specifically for the reasons that I laid out earlier. Next, the gap. Husbandry. In the West, husbandry is a major point of contention for males, especially traditionalist males like myself. I am a traditionalist. I am a husbandrinist. To those who don't know, husbandry is growing crops. The term husbandry leading to growing crops came about in mid 1300s because what it means is like, as a husband and as a father, I grow my family and I grow my crops through love. The love that I share and the light and the food that I give my children is what allows them to grow. The same can be said for my wife. I do not think that women are just as capable of that mechanism as men. It's okay. Or else it wouldn't be called husbandry. It would be called motherly. But motherly love and fatherly love are two significantly different things that are routed and rooted in the biology. Last thing I want to talk about is patriarchy. We're talking about legitimate patriarchal societies. So taking any patriarchal tenets that you have from modern gender theory and applying it to these societies, there is a gap because you're looking at what could be perceived as a patriarchal society to a legitimate patriarchal society. And I don't think sending 50,000 rabid feminists over there to tell the women to work will somehow make this better, even if you do manage to financially incentivize men to stay their ass home. They're going to have those negative outputs that I stated earlier.
Okay. So firstly, I think let's just talk about the financial benefit that actually comes with it. So let's just see what happens when a woman is actually is a housewife, and then a man actually goes out and then works out. He earns money, but the woman is not making any money because she's a housewife. But what after we are actually financially incentivizing men to be house husbands? So two people are earning money, and then what that is going to do is actually creating a better future for the children itself because they can invest more on their children and they can invest more on, let's just say, the quality of life actually increases in that perspective too. And secondly, I think what was the thing? Yeah, just the thing about education and how education can actually evolve it or anything. So I think you have lived in that conservative society for 2 years. I have lived in that conservative society for my 19 years. So I have seen that more closely here. So I'll just tell you what happens if in case a conservative society is actually is trying to be educated. So in Nepal, if in case like you get periods, like you cannot enter into the kitchen, you cannot touch anything, you cannot cook, you cannot pray, you cannot enter the temples and everything. So if in case you go up to an elderly person and then tell him that, like, why this is all foolish, like why this is all a distorted perception or distorted writing of like foolish writers and everything, this is not actually technically what it is meant to be, they're going to laugh at you or they're going to kick your ass, but they're not going to believe what you are saying. It doesn't really make sense. So what they will tell you is that don't speak in the middle of like elderly people. Like you're just too small to say that, or like it's just something that is not accepted by those kind of people. And again, like conservative societies, like as I explained it, that's how it comes to those people. And one of my friends, actually, his sister was about to get married, I think, in 20 years of age. And then later, after I found out that his sister actually got married, so I asked him, like, why didn't you stop? And he told me, like, he tried to talk to his father, like, that his sister should not be getting married this early, but his father just didn't listen to him, so that's how it works. They're not willing to listen. They're not willing to accept what you're going to say, or you're going to educate them with. So it doesn't really make sense. That's why we need a solution. And then why this solution would work is also because it's working from a government level. It's not something that maybe a group or feminist group or anyone actually goes up and then decides to do it, but it's on the government level. So when I think whenever things happen from a government level, I think people take it more seriously, and it actually gets implied as a law, as a policy, which brings more credibility in terms of its implementation. So I think it's a very fine way of changing the mindset of those kind of people, and creating better understanding between families and everything. So I think you talked about also how men, or how women actually would be more required for a child. I think even in terms of the theories that Sigmund Freud actually gave, maybe the Oedipus complex or those kind of things, how he talks about how there is more communication or more connection towards an opposite sex. So I think even in that case, I think it's not true when you say that a child like would necessarily have a better connection with her mother, because is a girl, I think I have the best connection with my dad. Like, he is my best friend. So so even those kind of things work. And I think yeah, so and yep, that's all I have to say.
Okay, so I want to start from the bottom on that. Sigmund Freud, great drop. So there is good reason to believe that that is true, and I will state this: I have a daughter. She is a daddy's girl, through and through, right? But here's the thing: she spent more time with me because I'm a house husband. When mom is home, you best believe, God forbid, get out of the way, Dad. I'm gonna go hug mom. So there's a catch all to that I think may be induced by time spent with parent. Right. So obviously a son's going to spend more time with his father from the age of like 4 on up, because he's got to learn masculinity, and obviously the mother is going to be around the daughter because she has to learn femininity. So when you remove that time frame, when you do see dad, you're like, oh my God, it's dad. And when the son sees mom, it's like, oh my God, it's mom. You want mom's attention, right? And that's where the Sigmund Freud, the Oedipal, and the Electra complex come from Freud. And I don't actually even buy Freud, to be honest. I think he did a lot of good stuff, but I think that Carl Jung did Freud better than Freud. That being said, so last point about the financial benefit, right? We got two people making money, right? But here's the problem: there's a serious caution issue if this is the way you're going to push it, right? So now you're taking women who don't have any other job other than like washing clothes. And not saying that this is easy, because trust me, I've seen them do it in third world countries. Not a fan, don't want to do it myself, but that's not the same level of human capital that the male has working in construction. So now she has to catch a biological detrimental value because she's not as strong, and then she has to catch up on the cognitive schedule. So some of these guys, they learn like construction in these places at like 8, 9, 10 years old because the education system isn't good enough. And then you're trying to sling these women in there that are 17, 18, 19 years old to go work. Obviously, they're not going to be able to do as well as. So then we're going to have a problem with GDP going down. Not only is there not growth, it's in the negative. And then you have the government having to pay all of these men to stay at home. So you're You're spending more money, and then you're hoping that the benefit that comes to these children, after we've already explained what I think are net negatives to it, to somehow, in the long run, make the place better. I just don't see that that's going to work out, because, I mean, you're going to collapse an entire country if this doesn't work out just right. Because the payments themselves is just like, okay, so let's say that I make $10 a month and you're my wife and we have 3 kids. I'm going to stay at home. The government's going to pay me $5 a month, and you go out and you make $5 a month. How much is the government just lose right there? Like, think about it. The government just lost $5, and then they lose like half the growth that we do, and it's just like, wait, that don't add up. So if you do manage to do it, you're putting undue stress on those movers and shakers who are probably already progressive themselves, right? But if we stick to my plan, the education plan, which you made a refutation, right, with your personal experience, and I can understand that, and that's true. But that's why there's an enforcement mechanism behind my education. One, we can say, hey guys, when you're off work, you have to spend an hour a day in these classes. If you do not, you will be fined. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to go to these classes, right? So during the classes that we had to give the gentleman in question into learning how to properly have sex, many of them wanted to leave. But then we told them, you kill any more of your women, then we're going to let this other tribe over here come and conquer you, because they actually do know how to have sex, and the women will be okay with that. Obviously, that changed their mind, because there is an enforcement mechanism. Secondly, is that we can also start this education at young ages. When we affect these children at the young ages through proper education, then later on, we'll see the long-term benefit come about. So at the end of the day, I think everyone should negate the resolution and affirm my counter plan that education is a better mechanism to fixing the conservative societies where men are very awful to women, and promote husbandry throughout.
Okay. Again, on this part, so so you see, if in case someone goes to school, let's just say from now on, someone goes to school, and then maybe even though the person actually comes from a conservative society, the person goes to school, the person grows up, I can bet that the person is not going to be as conservative, or is not going to adapt to his family values. But what are you going to do of those people who are actually already maybe 60 or 50 or 40, that have actually passed those learning phases? And then now it's difficult to get into those people and then actually make them understand that why is it necessary to equally see men and women. So that's the problem here. If in case you are going to educate someone from a conservative society now, from now on, let's just say starting from 1 class or 2 class, the person is definitely not going to be like dominating or discriminating. The person will grow very liberal, and then he'll be fine. But the problem is that we need to take this out of those people who have actually already passed this learning phase, and that's why education is not going to work out. And secondly, because as I said, this is something that has been rooted in their values, and that's why it is very much difficult for them to take it out of it. Like, because it's not something they have believed, let's just say for like 2 years or 3 years. It is something that has been engrossed in them since years and years, and that's why your little bit of education is not going to work on this part. Because yeah, as I said. And secondly, I think the idea that when you say maybe women will not be able to make as much growth as men, I think I deny that idea. And I think that idea actually comes from a conservative mindset. And to remove that mindset, we need to financially incentivize men to be house husbands. So let's just see what happens in conservative societies is that it's not necessarily women who just know how to wash clothes, or let's just say feed people, feed like their children or anything on home. What happens in conservative society is that even though you are an MBA graduate, or even though you are like you have a master's in psychology, you have to be a housewife. That's the problem that's existing with those kind of conservative societies. So in that case, the idea that maybe they would be making less growth does not really count, because I think they also should be given that level of opportunity to actually go out and then like practically approach whatever they have studied. So we have actually a benefit or larger prospect on that part because yeah. So just looking up on generally on this motion, I think we financially benefit those financially benefit families. We emotionally benefit those families too because we give a space for a spouse, for a male to understand his wife better. We give a child to actually understand his father better as well, because what happens in conservative societies is that if you see, they love their mother more because they don't really have time to spend with their father. I've seen my best friend. So whenever I ask, like, if in case like she loves her father, or I can see she can choose, so she can choose her mother like every time over her father. That's because like her father is busy in business, doing business. He's busy traveling the world. He has never been with her so closely, so yeah, so we are actually creating this difference because of our gender roles that has been like engrossed. So if in case we actually do this, we are actually giving the space to understand, for a child to understand their father better, because we have always seen father as someone like who is egoistic, maybe like who goes out and makes money and then boasts about that, like so I think we give a child more space. We give a father or a husband more space to understand his wife, even in terms of addressing the role of a housewife, like how it works. Because what happens in conservative societies is that people are like very dominating. They're like, what are we even doing staying at house? But they're actually doing a lot. They're actually doing more than what they're doing outside. So I think this gives them a space to understand that thing. And yeah, and because we need a solution, so we need this.
All right. Thank you so much. I gotta go. I gotta attend to my housewife work, house husband work. Thank you. Have a
Okay.
good
Well, thank you so much for taking this.
one.